Hey there, friends. So thank you so much for purchasing the Scout X Slingshot from SimpleShot. So I want to get you up and running as quickly as possible, but there's a couple of things you really need to pay attention to get the most enjoyment out of your slingshot. So the Scout X is a modern adult slingshot that is ideally suited for flat band latex. So certainly you can shoot tubular bands, but you're going to receive 2 flat bands with your slingshot. I want to show you how to set those up. So if you're a long-time slingshot fanatic and you understand the basics, you can probably stop here and you've probably already got it set up and you never watched this in the first place. But if you're just getting started, we want to get you started consistently and well, because the key to really enjoying your slingshot is understanding how it works and understanding why it's not working for you when you have trouble. So here we go. So you've got your slingshot. It's going to come just like this. You've got the slingshot body, which is the green part. You've got the scales, the handle scales. We'll refer to those as scales, as the parts that are here on the front and the back of the slingshot. And you've got the clips. And these clips here are located on the back of the slingshot, or what we're going to refer to as the target side of the slingshot. The reason we call it the target side is because when you hold the slingshot, that part is going to be facing the target. Likewise, the logo, the SimpleShot logo on the front, we're going to refer that as the shooter side of the slingshot. So you got the shooter side of the slingshot, that's the side facing you, and the target side of the slingshot, the side facing the target. Those are our reference points. All right, so you got 2 sets of flat bands here. So these flat bands are optimized for either 7/16 steel, marbles, 3/8 steel, the most common projectiles you're probably going to find. If you're shooting something lightweight like 1/4" steel or 8mm steel, 5/16, or you're shooting something like taconite pellets or clay, you're going to want to leave these bands long. Better yet, you're going to consider getting bands that are appropriate for that lighter ammo. But if you're shooting something that weighs 55 grains to say 75 grains, which is roughly a 3/8 or 9.5mm steel ball, all the way up to about a 7/16 or 11mm steel ball, these bands are going to be great, but you're going to want to tune them. One caveat here. If you're a brand new beginner, let's go ahead and start with these bands full length. We're going to assume that you're not a beginner and you're going to dive right into it. You're going to understand that you've spent some time shooting your slingshot at full length, not appreciating the power if you've got a face anchor, and realizing that later you're going to need to tune your bands. We've got lots of videos, but we're going to do it really quick. So I know that my draw length is about 30 inches. We define that draw length as the point that it attaches to the slingshot to where it anchors wherever it finishes drawing out. For me, I anchor with my thumbnail in the corner of my mouth. When I hold the slingshot out this way, that's about 30 inches of stretch. I like to see 4 to 5% elongation. So what does that mean? Let's say we have 30 inches, divide it by 3 to 5. That's going to give you somewhere roughly 7 to 6 inches. That's 7 to 6 inches of active rubber in the system. So your bands come about 10 inches long. They will accommodate a draw out to about 45 to 50 inches for those who really like to draw deep. Don't recommend you do that if you're a beginner. If you're already advanced, you know what you're doing anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and tune these by taking off a few inches. So as I said, these are about 10 inches long. I do this a lot, so I'm not going to get out a tape measure, but I suggest you do. In slingshots, consistency is key, but I'm going to remove about 3 inches from these bands to get them to my sweet spot. So use a pair of sharp scissors or a razor blade and cut both bands at the same time. All right, next up, you've got to decide whether you're going to mount your bands in an over the top or a through the forks configuration. If you don't understand what that means, I'll give you the lowdown. Over the top means that the bands will come out of the top of the slingshot, off the top of this clamp. And this top sight will be your sighting reference when the bands are mounted that way. Through the forks is having the bands mounted on the side, thereby making the projectile travel through the forks upon release, and the sighting reference will be this lower one that's going to line up in the middle of the slingshot. I'm going to go ahead and get this one set up and through the forks. That's the way I like to shoot. If you're a beginner, I suggest that you shoot in an over-the-top configuration, and we'll do that next. So what you want to do is use your included hex key to loosen up the clamps. Don't take the clamps completely off. There's a chance that you could drop the fastener and lose it. We've designed this slingshot to where you can loosen it enough to provide plenty of space to get your bands in there. All right, we're going to reference again back to our target side of our slingshot and the shooter side of our slingshot. So we're always going to make sure these bands pull towards the shooter side of the slingshot, which is this side right here. If we're going to set it up on a through the forks orientation, I prefer to have my fingers on the slick side of the pouch, not the fuzzy side of the pouch. So in order to do so, I would orient my bands accordingly. So here I've got the band set up to where the slick side will be on the outside, so I will orient that by placing them in the through the forks orientation on this side first. So I'm going to insert the band until it hits the post. And I'm going to make sure that the band is centrally seated in the middle of the prongs. So if you happen to have your own bands that are wider, that's fine. Just center them up. These bands should fit perfectly. And then once they're in place, I'll just hold it in place with my thumb. At which point I can use my tool to tighten them down. So once you snug it down, just finger tighten it. Finger tighten it's all you've got to do. They will hold. You don't have to torque down on it. They're designed to hold fast. Okay, so we've got one side attached and we're heading for a through the forks attachment. So we can see here, you are now looking at the shooter side of the Slingshot, the side that's going to face you. We can see that the fuzzy side of the pouch is facing you, but as we turn this around, we will quickly see that the smooth side will face you, the shooter. That's the side that's going to interface with your fingers. And this is the orientation that we will clamp the next side on. So again, just like the first side, we insert the band until it hits the post. Make sure it's centered up. And then use your tool to snug down the screws until they're snug. Then finger tight. You're good to go. So you always want to check your attachment. So this one looks good. We've got even length of band on either side. We don't have any twists in the bands. They're matched top to bottom. Before we draw them back, we want to make sure they're good. So give them a couple of tugs down low, so if they were to let go, if you've done anything wrong, they're not going to release in your face. Once you feel confident about it, this Slingshot is now ready to shoot in the through the forks orientation. Okay, for the over-the-top installation, it's going to be really important that we reference back to our shooter side and target side of our Slingshot, and remember that there's a fuzzy side and a smooth side to the pouch. To get this over-the-top orientation correct, we're going to do as follows. If you've got a table, it may help. So we're going to place the Slingshot in a position to where the target side of the Slingshot is facing up. We're going to place our band set in a position where the fuzzy side of the pouch is facing up. And this is how we'll attach the band on the prong of the Slingshot. So we'll open this up to allow it to accept the band. Keeping our band in the fuzzy side up orientation, we're going to insert the bands until they hit the post and hold them in place with your thumb and tighten it down. Once you snug it up, go finger tight. You're just right. All right, so we've got one band attached. You are now looking at the shooter side of the Slingshot. You can see if I pull this band straight up, you are also looking at the fuzzy side of the Slingshot. We're going to install the other side exactly the same way, but there's going to be a little bend there. So go ahead and hold it in this orientation so you can see how you need to mount it into the clip on the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and move this around. Loosen that up a touch. Insert until I hit the post. Hold it in place. Lock it into position. Snug it down, then go finger tight. All right, now your Slingshot is set up in an over-the-top format. You're now looking at the target side of the Slingshot. The shooter side of the Slingshot is facing me. I've got it set up to where now you're looking down it from the shooter side, you've got a trough. If you can see from here, if I were to release a ball into that trough, it would naturally flow out the front of the Slingshot. When the bands release, there will be no twist in the bands. This is your orientation. It can shoot different ways. It can shoot if you've got a twist in the band. But the key with Slingshots is consistency. Do it the same way. So if you want to shoot with twists in your bands, always shoot with twists in your bands. But I suggest you don't. Shoot them this way. So now you have learned how to install your bands in the over-the-top format. Over-the-top format is oftentimes easier for beginners to master, but that is not always the case. The key with Slingshots is to experiment and have fun. If you're not sure, use a practice ammo like clay or rubber or plastic ammo. If you're really a beginner and you've never done this before, take your time, start with lighter bands, don't tune them up just yet, install them, shoot in a safe place, and most importantly, don't forget to wear your safety glasses and don't forget to install your supplied lanyard. All right, Nathan, so I like to shoot tubular bands. Can I do that with the Scout X? Yes, you can. All right, so if you're familiar with our products, you've seen our original flip clips, the Flip Clip X. You've probably seen videos on how to install tubular bands, whether they be looped or single strand, using our Flip Clip X or the original Flip Clip. It's all going to be the same. Never fear, you can shoot single strand loop tube, or excuse me, single strand tubes or looped tubes. So I'm going to show you right here with single strand tubes. Now, if you've never tried single strand tubes, they're great. They really do last a long time. They're soft, they're quiet, they don't tangle quite as much. They're a lot of fun. They add a lot of variety. I'm enjoying shooting single strand tubes a lot more lately. I've actually found a lot of joy shooting them longer with a butterfly style, so that's why these bands are set up as they are. But I do enjoy shooting this slingshot in the through the forks orientation, so I'm going to set it up as such first. So just like flat bands, you simply want to insert your latex, in this case tubular latex, into the clamps until it hits the post. Doesn't seem like it's going in there very far. It's not actually, but these clamps are designed to do one thing, and that's simply to hold latex for slingshot shooting in place. So go ahead and put them in position. I like seating these into through the forks orientation right on the dimp, the aiming dimp. They seat nicely. But go ahead and put that in position, hold it in place with your thumb, and then of course tighten it down. Now you're going to notice that they're a little bit thicker than flat bands, so you're going to have to compress them a touch more. But no different than the flat bands. Get them snug, finger tighten them, you're in business. So here I've got one attached already on the slingshot in the through the forks orientation. I'll do the exact same thing on the other side here, and we'll be off to the races. All right, so captured it in the clamp, lock it down, get it snug, then finger tighten it, and we're in place. As always, double check down here, make sure everything feels good. But now we have single strand tubular bands set up in a through the forks orientation for shooting through the Scout X. Really a lot of fun. So we're going to do the exact same thing for over the top. And what makes this even easier is because there's no orientation or bias from like a flat band would have, you can pretty much just lock those things in there as you need. So if you want to set your sight picture up to where the bands are closer to the sighting reference or closer to the inside or centered, you can put them anywhere across there in both the over the top and through the forks format. So instead of taking the time to show you how to do the exact same thing I did right here on top, I'm going to let you use your imagination because I know you're smart. You can figure this out. But I do want to answer the question for those who say, what about looped tubes? Can I shoot looped tubes? Sure, there's a couple of ways you can go about this. Now, I don't have a set of looped tubes on me, but we're just going to use our imagination. And this is what a looped tube would look like, this orientation here. So we can go about this two different ways. We can open up the clamps to their max length, somewhere in there. We've got plenty of room. Lift it up and loop it around the post in there. Now, you'll look inside there, you can see that there's a seat, a square seat for the post to sit into. Go ahead and make sure that the square post is sitting in its hole before you drop the bands in there. So you're gonna take your time, gently wiggle it in there, and then start snugging it up. You're going to lose a little bit of length in this orientation on your loop tubes. So if you've got a loop tube formula that works really well for you, you might want to add just a touch of length there because you are going to effectively cut off the part that's looping around the tube. And then these two pieces here are going to be attached. So and we can imagine here that this is a looped tube. This can be in an over the top or through the forks format. I really like this in a through the forks. So yeah, loop tubes will still work. Now, what about tabs? Yep, tabs work just fine. If you're not familiar with tabs, tabs are simply a piece of leather that you would clamp in the same place that a flat band would be clamped. Then you can either tie flat bands or tubular bands to the tab. And a tab can be nothing more than a pouch cut in half. So the slingshot has the capacity to match itself up to any of the popular latex that's on the market today. The key things here is take the time to make sure you're looking at your attachments, inspecting it carefully, and checking it before you go shoot. During shooting, take some time to check your bands out. Always look for nicks, tears, any abrasion. When you see those things starting to happen, that's time to repair your bands. Remember, your bands are consumable. You don't get to go out and shoot your .22 rifle without adding more bullets to it. Your bands are the bullets. In essence, it's the expendable and the consumable part of your slingshot shooting. It's the part that gives you your power, and it's the part that's going to give you the most downrange oomph. So really pay attention to it, learn how it works, and take care of it. Okay, so the last two things of note about the Scout X Slingshot that we want to fill you in on are the sighting references and the removable palm swell. So let's start with the sighting references here. So these are fiber optic, and this fiber optic is in two positions. The top position is for an over-the-top orientation. So if you have your bands mounted as shown right here in the over-the-top orientation, you would normally sight down the band. This top reference becomes the edge of the band. It lines up perfectly with it, and that becomes your sighting reference. Now, why do we call it a sighting reference and not a sight? Because a sighting system is composed of two parts, the rear sight and the front sight. So this is fundamentally a front sight. The rear sight is really going to change because that depends on your anchor. If I anchor at the corner of my mouth and you anchor at the base of your chin, we're going to have different points of impact for the same reference point off of this. So this becomes your sighting reference. So the top one is your sighting reference for shooting over the top with the bands mounted to the top of the slingshot. And the one down lower is the one that for through the forks. It lines itself up in the middle of the bands into through the fork orientation. Both of these are effectively your sighting reference that gives you a sense of where your point of impact will be at a given distance with your anchor point. So the key to slingshots is consistency. Find a consistent anchor point. I like to anchor with my thumbnail in the corner of my mouth. Yours might be different. Doesn't matter, just make sure it's the same spot. And then your reference point then becomes something static that works for you at your known distances. Next up, the palm swell. The palm swell is absolutely removable. A lot of people like the engagement they get from having a fuller palm swell. Others do not. Some people enjoy having a thinner profiled slingshot. Removing the palm swell allows the Scout X to be a very low profile slingshot if you enjoy pocketability. Likewise, you have the capacity to add an optional handle weight to the handle of this slingshot to give it a little bit more density and balance. If that's something that's important to you, that is certainly an option to use with the handle scale. But most importantly, we really enjoy seeing what people do with paracord wraps. So if you're the type of person that enjoys wrapping things in paracord, this gives you a great foundation to make your own paracord handle. And if you make one, please send us pictures. We always love to see those. So there you have it. There's the Scout X Slingshot. Quick rundown how to get up and running with it. If you ever have questions for anything related to any SimpleShot product, we are here for you. So don't hesitate to reach out. We love doing what we do. We thank you for your support. Get out and share a slingshot with a friend. Thanks for watching.